Hi Rahul, welcome to our blog. And yeah, so it's really nice to have you here. Really early morning for me, 9 o'clock, and late night for you. I think it's what 9:30 for you, right, in India?
Yes, around 9:30.
Yeah. So yeah, and so today we would like to have some chit chat with you around your journey as a front-end developer and your contributions to Vue.js and what guidance you have for newcomers, those who are trying to start with open source contribution. So let's start with your journey. Like, can you give us a brief about how you got started with front end development and what made you stick to front end side of it?
Yeah, like I still don't classify myself as front-end developer. I do everything. I am a programmer first, and like I almost do everything. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I love front-end, and like most of my front-end career started with Vue. Like it actually started with jQuery, and like I was very quick to jump from jQuery to Vue. So like it came in as a need. Like I was working on application for a client, and like it was a jQuery application, and it continuously become very complex. So I needed something so that like basically we needed some sort of reactivity or like state control, and Vue fit in really well because you can drop a link and replace jQuery, like,
Hmm.
which is not possible with other frameworks. So like it kind of was perfect for me
Yeah.
at the time, and like I started with that.
I think that's a notion that a lot of developers have who come to Vue.js, right? Like especially if they have tried some other frameworks and then they come to Vue.js, it's like a breeze of like fresh air for them. It's really simple. In fact, I also had a very similar experience. Like when we started with front-end social, I
Hmm.
thought I was working on React and Angular before, and then I thought, okay, why not give a try to Vue this time? We'll have a production application ready, and we'll learn something new. And
Hmm.
while working on it, it was really a very good experience. Like it was as if I'm writing HTML itself. There wasn't anything
Yeah.
extra apart from it, and the same CSS, same HTML, and JavaScript put together. Very simple and intuitive. And even
Yeah.
other developers who contributed to the project, they came from either React or Angular, and it didn't take them more than a few days to ramp up on the code and start contributing.
Hmm. In
So
fact, like that's one of the design principle of Vue. So like we call it a progressive framework. So like it is designed to be incrementally adoptable. So like you don't need to learn everything, and it's designed for beginners.
hmm,
So like the 2.0 Vue was specifically designed for beginners, and now we see like more and more big enterprises are using Vue.js. So we began a rewrite, and like 3.2 is almost ready and it's coming out. And this time the main focus was scale. So yeah, like in Vue 2.0 also scaled really well for small applications and large applications, but
hmm,
it kind of lacked some features which could be like more helpful in big applications. And like if you're familiar with React hooks, the composition mindset is really like that scales really well. If you are
hmm,
building a large application and building with hooks kind of an architecture where you can compose your logic in multiple functions, and like that is what we have incorporated. Like Vue has something called composition functions. They are
hmm.
similar to React hooks, but very different also. Like they uh, they accept the reactivity and like the way of doing things in Vue, like using mutations and observe state. So they are inspired, definitely inspired from React hook, but they are much more than them.
Hmm. Okay, yeah. Yeah, what I really like there is you don't have to really worry about the lifecycle methods anymore, and you can put your related logic together. So, which is really clean, much
Yeah.
better. So, since we are on it, where do you see Vue going from here? Like, what's the future of Vue from 3.0?
So it's an incremental step in Vue's journey. So I think like we last couple of years we saw lots of big organizations started using Vue. We see like GitLab is using Vue, and uh, CodeShape, like Adobe and like Microsoft, they are also using Vue for internal projects. Apple did build their docs, the SwiftUI docs using Vue. So many people started using Vue, and like I see, and the JavaScript ecosystem has also completely transformed since the time Vue 2.0 was written. Now, Internet Explorer is not a major browser for most of the people. It's still significant for some, but it's not for most of the people, and that gives us a new baseline. Now, ES modules and proxies are supported in all majority of the browsers. So that gives us a new common denominator which we can build on, and like that's what Vue 3 is about. It's using proxies, so like larger surface area of the JavaScript object which can be observed, and much faster because like proxy is meant for traps and intercepting the calls on objects. So it's much faster than 2.0 approach where we are using object.define, and we had to do all the reactive conversions beforehand, because like if you have 10 properties on an object, you have to make them reactive beforehand before a component is created in 2.x. In
Okay.
3.0 you can create a proxy and you can lazily convert them into reactive objects. So there are performance improvements are coming in 2.0 due to the because of this new approach. And another thing, like another core principle for this new rewrite, new redesign was that in 2.x we had to basically balance features and size of the framework. So if there's a new feature request, we have to balance like if it's too much payload on for all the users, then we have to skip on some features. Because if we add a feature, if it adds 2 KB to the Vue core bundle, and that means that it would be adding 2 KBs to all the applications, even if
Yeah.
they need this feature or not. In 3.0, we went with a structure and architecture where most of the features are tree shakeable. So if you are not using a feature, it's automatically removed. All the modern bundlers like Webpack or Rollup, they support tree shaking and they remove unused code. So Vue source code is written like that. So now we don't have to make that trade-off like between size and features. So that's also one of the core principles in 3.0 rewrite. And
Okay.
we spend a lot of time on compiler. So like Vue templates are static, and that gives us unique opportunities to optimize the components. So we spend a lot of time. We are inferring lots of things from the template, and we are recording all this information in some sort of flags. They're like bit flags which are used by runtime to skip on unnecessary work. That almost gave us 2x speed in most common cases. And like for static website, it's for static components, it's around 10x or something. So like really huge speed improvements, a really huge size improvements also, like the bundle size improvements also. And proxies also give us better memory uses also. So
Okay.
3.0 is going in good direction, and it's gone. I think it's going to stay for foreseeable future.
And is there anything in pipeline for caching of the library modules? Like, let's say if a user has already seen one of the Vue applications or websites,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
now if they jump to another Vue website, is anything
Hmm.
already cached on the browser, or they have to get the entire bundle again?
So how the applications are built are like most of them are using bundlers,
Hmm.
and when you are using bundlers, it's difficult to do caching. Also, all the browsers now have domain specific caching, so cache from one domain is not shared with another. So like that's already out of the case. So there's no point in trying to do those things. Most browsers are already doing this, but the ones which are not doing now, they would be soon doing this thing. So there is no cross domain cache sharing now. So we like either you have to depend on a CDN,
Hmm.
that's there, but I'm not sure if even CDNs are now shared between multiple domains or not.
Okay. I think there was some talk going on between the browser standards to start caching these framework library files, like different versions of those, so that
Yeah.
because like there's so many Angular, so many React and Vue projects now in the market, right? And everybody has to just keep getting the library files, vendor files again and again. So
Hmm.
do you have any insight on that? Like what's happening on that side?
I don't have an insight on that, but like I am aware of the efforts like having local packages. I guess standard imports or something like this. So there was there was an effort where some of the packages, like a couple of packages, were offered statically, like were already downloaded in browsers. But thing is, packages like Vue, which have multiple versions, and like people can depend on, like
Mm.
you can ship your application with a development build of Vue, or you can ship with a trimmed version, like you are using a couple of features and only the relevant code is now in your bundle. So like there
Yeah.
is, like if such a thing is going to happen, that would require larger collaboration between the communities. And right now, I'm not aware of any efforts being done in this direction.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, especially if you have tree checking in place, then it's going to be very difficult to cache from one side to another. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Is there anything that the user has to do from their side to take advantage of the tree checking that you mentioned in 3.2, or it just
Uh,
comes with Webpack, the default Webpack config?
so there's no like you don't need a Webpack config for this. It just comes out of the box. So the Vue package is implemented as a ES module. So you have to import whatever you need. Let's say you want to use a transition. If you are using a transition in template block, the compiler automatically does the import part. If you are using in JavaScript, like some using some feature in JavaScript, you have to import from the Vue package. And how all the tree shaking algorithms work is like they look at what are the imports and they try to remove is what something which is not being imported. So
Hmm.
there's nothing extra you need to do. Is basically you get automatic. The tree checking is something you get automatically when you're using a feature, and when you are not using a feature, it's automatically dropped from your bundle.
Hmm. Have you seen any kind of figures around, like, let's say, any general applications, how much of reduction of payload size it is, or how much is the speed difference?
So if you like right now, the baseline bundle, like including everything in Vue, is around 20 kilobytes. And if you're building a very minimal website which is not using transitions or like suspense or all these fancy new features, if you're building a plain static website, you can get the Vue bundle up to 10 kb. So like this,
Okay.
there's a potential of 50% reduction.
Hmm.
So like
Oh yeah, that's a big reduction. Yeah.
yeah, like you will get somewhere around between 10 to 20 kilobytes compressed.
Okay. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. So, yeah, coming back to your journey, tell us how you started contributing to Vue. Like, what was your first PR, and what was a lot of people are apprehensive about, especially going after contributing
Oh,
to big libraries.
I yeah, I have to check my first year. I don't actually remember it, but yeah, like I was using Vue a lot. Like somehow it fit my requirements at the time. Like the complexity, the lack of very complex jargon in Vue and all those things. It was pretty easy to pick for me, and it somehow fit my requirements. And I was using it in all the projects I was working on. And like back when I started with working with Vue, like Vue was not the thing that we use today. Like there was no V4. We used to have something called v-repeat, or like the API was completely different.
Yeah. And when
And
was this?
community was uh
I think
around
around 2016 or so, I guess, probably. Eh?
around
17.
2016.
Yeah.
I guess late 2015 or early
Okay.
2016, around that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like I guess it was around version zero point 0.6 or zero point 0.7. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, the community was not this big. and I used to use Rollup to build my applications. I still like prefer Rollup over Webpack because like same thing, like Rollup has very less complexity in it, and yeah. So I used to use Rollup, and Vue didn't had a plugin for Rollup,
Okay.
so I had to hack up something, and like from there the contribution started, and like I found some things in the core compiler, and like I have to uh, basically fix those things. And somehow like this plugin, like everyone looked into this plugin, and like community was already finding this thing useful, so he invited me along with this plugin to the core team.
Oh, oh, that's nice. Yeah. Yeah. And after that, it has been like you have been contributing quite a lot, right? Like to Vue. Like, how is your day today with Vue? Like, how much time do you have to spend on that?
So it's nothing fixed. It's like it varies from time to time. Like the main thing I work on is mainly compiler and tooling,
Okay.
and I work a lot on like new experimental things. So yeah, so
That's the fun
nowadays,
part. Yeah.
yeah, that's the fun part, definitely. So like I have worked on lots of experimental things, and like they are incorporated either in core or in the ecosystem. And nowadays I'm focusing mainly on ID support for Vue. So I'm trying to build a TypeScript plugin which
Okay.
will provide TypeScript-like functionalities or features in a Vue file. You can say refactoring, completion, or uh, basically inspecting all the features you see in a TypeScript file. I'm trying to get all those features in a Vue file.
Okay. So, yeah. What's your view on the TypeScript part of it? Like, how do you find TypeScript and its integration with Vue?
In 3.0, it's much better. There's still places where we can improve on, but compared to 2.x is much better. Like Vue 3.0 is written in TypeScript, and like it's designed that the higher level language TypeScript is. So we will get types out of the box, but how the Vue API is like it's very object based API where it's not always straightforward to provide type support. So like we have props, we have computer properties and all those things, and they combine together to create a context. So you can directly do this dot prop name, or this dot a computer property, or this dot a method name. So like providing that kind of complex type is not easy. So like we are much in a much better state. But if you're using the new composition API, the setup function, there you will get 100% type support, because like that thing, functions are easy to type, objects are hard. So like functional API is going to be you will going to have very good TypeScript experience there.
Okay. And there is a hot topic going on these days around Twitter. Like a lot of people, they prefer single component per file, or a lot of people they're saying, okay, no, why have so many files? Just put everything which are related together, all those components together as one file. What's your take on
Hmm.
that?
Uh, so if you are using .vue files, you already have one component per file.
Hmm.
So like there's no work around that. But I think like if you, the main reason why you want multiple components in one file is because you are writing really tiny components, and you think like writing one line in each file is little cumbersome compared to writing 10 lines in one file. But if you see 2 years back, all those people who are saying that write everything in one file were talking about basically what the thing,
It's monolithic
uh,
applications.
not the monolith thing, like single responsibility principle. Like I don't remember the exact words, but yeah, they were talking about like encapsulation, or thing like a component should be an independent entity, it should not depend on outsider
Hmm.
things. Now if you put two Now, if you put two functions, let's say you're writing functional components, and if you put two functions in one file, and if you see like these two functions can share something, like that makes that would require more discipline
Hmm.
in developers to not basically share resources or share variables between two components in one file.
Hmm.
So if we are trying to put multiple components in one single file, that would require a different kind of rules, a different kind of discipline,
Hmm.
which we don't need when we are writing one component per file. And in the end, like if writing five components in one file or writing five files, one component each, is not much of a problem now. Like we have big screen, we can open five files on one screen. So
Yeah. In fact,
it's
one of the arguments in favor of that was like if you have multiple files, there are lesser chances of Git conflicts also, right? So, like
yeah,
multiple people
that's
can work
true.
on different files, and they're not really stepping on each other's toes. So,
That's true. And like
so yeah,
testing becomes literally easier. Like basically, like less coupling between files is there. So this, but yeah, like these are opinions, and like like developers are uh, always too much involved in their opinions. Like spaces versus tabs still going
yeah,
on. So like it's same kind of debate.
yeah.
This,
Yeah, thankfully, at least with some things like ESLint and Prettier, at least all the
hmm.
styling debate for a given project has gone away. Like you are not really, you cannot really do things in different ways. There is just one way of
Hmm.
styling, at least for a given project. So,
Oh yeah, but I loved Prettier when it had no config. Now it has some config. Like some people prefer double quotes, some
yeah,
people prefer semicolons. Like still there is debate, but really much lesser. Now people don't think about put a space between function parentheses or don't put a space between normal parentheses. These kind of debates are gone.
yeah,
Now like they are lesser. Like do we need single quotes or do we need double quotes? That kind of like scope has reduced, but debates are still going on.
yeah. So will Vue ever have any kind of opinionated config for Prettier or ESLint? Or does it? I didn't see it if it
Uh,
already has.
Vue has a style guide, and it's more on error prevention rather than the cosmetics of a file.
Okay.
So, like most of the rules which we have there are targeted for error prevention.
Okay.
So, and like use Prettier. Prettier supports Vue, and
Hmm.
they give you a decent output.
Yeah.
Code should be readable. Like it's not a piece of art which you are going to showcase in
Hmm.
a museum. It should
Yeah.
be readable and understandable, and like till it's understandable and readable, like you
Yeah.
don't need to beautify it, you don't need to put extra spaces or extra commas to just
Yeah.
make it look good.
Yeah. Yeah. So maintainability is the only prime concern, like,
Yeah.
as long as it is maintainable. So, which way do you recommend somebody who's, let's say, starting a new project to start it with
Hmm.
the Vue CLI, or are there good, you know, the startup boilerplate codes, any good boilerplate codes which are there?
So like boilerplate templates are little out of date now. Like since Vue CLI was released, boilerplates were kind of like deprecated unofficially
Hmm.
by the community. And like you can start with Vue CLI. That's like if you really want to use the build tools. But best way to start, like if you're just starting learning, is to drop a CDN link in your HTML file and
Hmm.
write directly in the HTML file. Like stay away from build process unless you really need it.
Okay.
As just an extra complication. Like if your main focus is just learning, is learn Vue without any build system. Like learn just the purity of Vue, and when you think like I know enough and let's try to build a small application, maybe
Hmm.
then introduce CLI.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't think from this angle. Like most of us, we just start with the Vue CLI because it kind of gives us a full-fledged project and start with it. But yeah, it's actually maybe a good idea to start just getting the script tag and start
Hmm.
working on it. Right? That way,
Yes.
we get to learn a lot more. Actually. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, like, the goal of vue-cli is not to teach people.
Hmm.
The main goal for a vue-cli is to scaffold a
Hmm.
starter for a project and like be there during the journey of the project, like provide build, provide linting, provide testing, all those kind of features. That's the main goal. If you're looking specifically for learning purposes, like follow the guide. Maybe there are really good courses if you are a visual learner. There are good courses on Vue School and Vue Mastery.
Okay.
They have really good courses, and if you learn from text, then Vue docs are really good. Follow the guide. Uh, Instead of going through the build process and all, just create create an HTML file and like directly edit there. Put everything in one HTML file and like learn the features, learn the functionalities of Vue
Yeah.
rather than fiddling with all the toolings.
Yeah. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So here's the main question that a lot of developers have, like those who want to, let's say, start contributing to open source in general. How do you recommend they start their journey? Like there is a lot of apprehension of how to get started and the various processes around it.
Hmm. So like when people want to like when they are willing or want to contribute to open source, first thing they need is like a project. Like they need to find a project which they can contribute to. And like this project cannot be a new project. It should be, or it must be something you have already worked with, used at work, or like you are already familiar, at least from the like user API, so that you know like what are the problems or like what needs fixing or something like that. Next thing is like you need to find an issue which is uh, relatively at a surface level. Like if you jump on an issue which is in the core of that tool or application, it would be difficult at first because you have to understand a lot of logic. So try to find an issue which is at surface level. And good thing is like lots of project maintainers label these surface level issues with a good tag,
Hmm.
uh, the good
Good
first
first
issue
issue.
tag.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can search for good first issues in that project. If you don't find good first issues, you can look like who is the maintainer or like who is the most frequent code committer there, and maybe reach out to them, ask them like if there is a low hanging fruit on this project which they can contribute on. So like let's say you found an issue. Now the thing is like you have to understand what's happening and like propose a fix before that. Like another thing you can do is like you can ask the maintainer to assign that issue to you, so that someone else is not working on that,
Hmm.
like there's no duplicate work being done. So that's a good practice to do. And now let's say you are working on it and you have a direction and you can propose. So earlier we used to do on the issue itself, we used to propose the solutions. Now GitHub introduced, like assuming like GitHub is the primary place where we are doing open source. So like GitHub is this thing called draft PRs. So you can start a draft PR with your proposed solution and explain in that PR description like what you are trying to do, what you are trying to achieve, so that you are very new to this project. You need some guidance from the maintainers. Like there could be a certain way in which they are doing things, or there could be something which could affect performance of this application. There can be n number of things that that which are not recorded in any document, but they are kind of common knowledge among the contributors. So like need you need a go from the contributors or maintainers that your approach is good. When it's done, like complete it, write some test cases. Test cases are really important.
Hmm.
If you are dumping some code without test cases, it's just burden for the maintainers.
Hmm.
So like whatever you write should be covered with test cases. And then yeah, then ask the maintainers, like the code review cycle goes on, and when everything is good, it got merged.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a really good point that we should start with the surface first, like any kind of easy to fix things, because a lot of
Mm,
people they want
mm,
to directly jump into the core part of it, which is. But
yeah,
one more problem that they face is because of this to and fro communication that happens a lot, right? Before they
yeah,
actually get to merge a PR, like there is a lot of process that gets involved, especially on bigger projects.
mm,
It's a really long turnaround time before they put in their code, right? Which sometimes
mm,
is kind of they get a lot more demotivated if it is if it is the first time they're contributing, because they are not really used to they don't know how much time it should take or so, and they think that okay, especially their first PRs are not so much in good shape, so they do get a
yeah,
lot of requests to improve it again and again and again, and that
mm,
does bring down the morale quite a lot. So have you faced
yeah.
this kind of situations, and how do you deal with such first timer?
Okay, so like in general, in open source, patience is something that you need. Like most of the people who are working are not, majority of the people are not working as like their primary job on this thing. This is maybe a hobby thing or a weekend thing or like off work thing. So you can't expect people to basically jump on to your issue and like your request and help you.
Hmm.
So like it's how it works is an asynchronous communication, and it's a very slow asynchronous communication. It could be like you ask
Hmm.
a question and people reply in a week. Sometimes it can take months, and I have seen some issues which have taken years to get a response.
Yeah.
So it can be disappointing for someone who is really new. Like you want to get things done immediately, and uh, one approach you can take is like try to contribute to known code part of the project, like maybe documentation or testing, or
Hmm.
these kind of things get merged faster. Because like if you are improving documentation, somebody sees it and like feels yeah, this is better. So like they don't need testing or then they need much discussion on this thing. It's just text and people can read and they can feel like if it makes sense or it improves the documentation, they can immediately merge it. So documentation contributions are something that can be done in low turnaround time. Then there are test cases. You see, like there's a project and like, you can write a test case that can increase the coverage. So those kind of test cases are like those kind of contributions are also have they also have low turnaround time, because you are just adding to a project and like you are not adding any weight to the actual source code. You are just
Hmm.
writing test cases. Then there are things like maintenance stuff. Uh, you will find in most projects there are comments that say like do this thing, or like they are left there. So you can find those, and like they most of the time they are very simple, but very manual or like labor intensive, you can say. So you can look for those kind of things, but these kind of things are rare in good open source project. But you will find anything like people generally tend to do this thing, like we'll do this thing later. You
Hmm.
can find those, and like they are also like they will also tend to have low turnaround time, because the maintainer is already running from those issues.
Hmm.
And if somebody is interested in contributing to that part, they are willing to accept those contributions.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember I had raised one issue with one of the libraries that I was using, and
Mm.
I got a notification in my email about 6 months later that okay, somebody commented on that, and then they started discussing on it. So sometimes it can be really long turnaround time for things to get
Yeah,
fixed.
yeah, like people have so many priorities, and I
Hmm.
think open source would be last in the list.
Hmm. But I think nowadays, yeah, it's changing quite a lot, right? Like the overall mindset for open source, even from the company's point of view, they are supporting developers quite a lot to go and start
Hmm.
contributing to open source. It's kind of adding value to somebody's profile if they have contributed to open source, especially to open source projects which are used quite, quite adapted quite widely and all. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, there is a lot of interest nowadays. So, coming back to these kind of back and forth communications on certain peers, I'm sure you
Hmm.
would have faced a lot of situations where there are heated debates about preferences for a given peer, right? Like, how do you handle when there is a lot of conflicts in opinion
Hmm.
between people on how a certain peer should be handled? Are there any set of etiquettes that you already put forth, or does the conflict ever go out of hands, kind of thing?
Yeah, like it happens, but it's I think it won't ever be a responsibility of the contributor to manage these kind of heated debates or something. It mainly goes on the maintainer. Like most projects have a code of conduct, and uh, like maintainers are the authority to uphold this code of conduct. If they see someone violating these things, they can mute the conversation, block the users, or and number of things that can be done. Like most common thing is these issues or the pull requests are put on hold. There's something called there's a feature in GitHub called limit conversations to contributors or maintainers, something like that.
Okay.
So that is generally used, and like you use this kind of to basically add a buffer time so that people cool down and think
Mhm.
rationally. Another way, like if a project is really big, say Vue or React, they have a separate place where these kind of heated debates go on. This thing is called request for comments, and like all the heated debates go there. People debate on features, and like if something is approved from there, then it goes to PR stage. So, but
Okay.
you will see opinions like these kind of opinions on larger projects. Smaller projects won't have these kind of heated debates
Mm.
because most of the time there is not a big maintainer team or something, or like most people are just using this thing, and like maintainers are building this thing in the side in their free time. So on smaller projects you don't won't find this kind of heated debates.
So how do you resolve such conflicts? Is it like by voting of, like, the majority, or the maintainer takes a call of which way to go? Like, let's say there are two different opinions for a given solution.
In the end, like it's the maintainer's decision. So I can tell you how it happens in Vue. So let's say there's a feature, and like there are voices on pro and like con side of this feature, and like we take those things objectively, and then the core team gets to vote. So like what do you
Okay.
want this, like do you want this thing in or out, or like if you let's say you most of the people, let's say the team doesn't want this thing in the current form, so we get to present like what could be the improved form or something like that. So in the end, like it in Vue it goes to the voting in the core team, and depending on the vote the feature goes in or out of.
Okay.
So I think there would be similar processes in all the open source projects which
Hmm.
are maintained by larger teams.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, right? Like to give voting rights to the core team so that there is some kind of a discussion happening, but it's not to everybody, but like, to few decision makers. So that makes the process also faster, probably, and more accurate. So,
Hmm.
yeah. So, coming back to contribution specifically to Vue project,
Hmm.
how easy is it for somebody to start contributing to Vue now? Because I think there is already a big lineup of people who would want to uh, contribute to Vue, right?
Hmm.
And how can they approach it?
So when you say contribute to Vue, like Vue is not one library or one package. It's an ecosystem of packages. It has router, it has build tools, it has dev tools, it has GSX support or TypeScript support. So many things are there. Like if you go to the Vue organization, you will see hundreds of repositories, and like all of these repositories are contribution surfaces. Like you can contribute to any one of those, and like definitely Vue core is right now very hot because we recently rewrote everything, and people see this thing as an opportunity to contribute. But that also means like Vue core is relatively harder to contribute
Hmm.
because so many people have already looked through this thing, and the RFC process is closed, so like no new features are coming, only bug fixes and these kind of things are there. So You have to find a project which aligns your interest. Like there is a webpack loader for Vue that is that can basically use some contributions. Then there's rollup plugin that can use some contributions, and then Vuex and router are there. So
Hmm.
like router and Vuex are in uh, relatively a little early stage compared to the Vue core. So like those are now good contribution surfaces, and the kind of contributions which we are looking for right now is like more edge cases, like basically try to break Vue in like, there is we are trying
Hmm.
to find the edge cases or like where things stop working or something like that. So we are looking for those kind of contributions. Like if you find something where Vue is not working, and like you can contribute that as a failing test case, so that that can be fixed later.
Okay. And does the person who raises an issue, do they get any kind of preference for fixing it, or can anybody just come and fix it?
Anybody can fix it. So like we prefer if people ask to assign these issues, so that we try to avoid duplicate work. So
Hmm.
if you can ask to assign, like you can ask the maintainers that assign this issue to you, but like assigning an issue also have a little side effect also. Like if you we assign issue to one person and that person is incommunicado, like you don't know what he or she is doing, now that issue is kind of blocked, nobody else is trying to take that thing. So if you are assigned an issue, now it's your responsibility to basically communicate the process or progress, and like be like basically you have to report your status. And like if you feel like you don't want to do this thing or you don't have time to do this thing, then it's your responsibility to basically unassign yourself. So
Yeah. Yeah,
there's
I see
no
this
preference.
problem.
Yeah, like there's
Sometimes
no
in my project
preference on
also.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes in my projects, I see that somebody who would pick up a issue that they would want to contribute to, but then that's where it stops. Like it doesn't go beyond that, and then it's like 2 weeks gone, and then we don't hear back, and then we have to keep following
Mm.
up to because it's kind of rude to unassign them, and so we have to just keep asking them like
Mm.
where they are on that progress.
Yeah, sadly, we don't have an official process of doing these things. Like these
Hmm.
things are handled unofficially, and everyone handles these things differently. Like in Vue core, there are many people who are trying to contribute. So like there's more availability, less like compared to demand. If you are working on another like plugin in ecosystem or something like that, maybe there you have less contributors. So like people wait on assignees for a longer time. So like there's no official process across this thing, but yeah, like there's generally no rule that you get a preference if you create a issue or something like that.
Okay. And nowadays, recently we see a lot of people. They get real mental issues. Like a lot of people get anxiety attacks, or they feel a lot of depression because of certain times there will be a lot of negativity in the community for the work they have done and all. So, how do you deal with such kind of situations when there are a bunch of people who are trying to bring you down, kind of thing, and not being very
Yeah.
collaborative?
Yeah, like I think like these are my personal views. Like you need a belief and you need a support system. Like you need to believe that whatever you're building is important, and like you are doing because you believe in this thing. And there would always be hate in this world. So you need a support system, like can be friends, can be colleagues who like help you, like someone you can discuss these things with, like someone who you can discuss the problems you are facing or something. Like a support system and your belief in the project can help. But yeah, like I'm not an expert in this thing, and like I see hate going on, hate on Twitter mainly.
Hmm.
So like my personal solution is like I turn off the like turn off social media for a while and come back
Hmm.
later.
Hmm. Yeah. And do you ever face any kind of a burnout because of, let's say, too much of working on the project or so?
Yeah, like
and how do you deal with that?
bu- burnout is pretty common in open source, I guess.
Hmm.
So like it happens, like there's a new idea and you are really excited about it and you work a lot for that, and after a while you feel it is sluggish or like burnt out. And like my solution of this thing is like I take breaks so that we don't have any responsibilities that you have to work on like this amount of work you have to be done to be in core team or something like that. You don't have anything like that. So most of the contributions are voluntary, and like breaks are encouraged. Like if you
Hmm.
feel like you don't want to work for a month or like for 2 months or something, like take breaks, come back when you feel better. Like for my case, open source is like an hobby for me,
Hmm.
and like I uh
Oh, you
wait a
vanished in
second,
space.
it's 10:30 and like my light automatically goes off when it's 10:30.
Oh, that's a cool feature actually to put you to bed like early. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was saying,
Yeah, about the burnout part. Yeah.
yeah, burnout. So yeah, so my like personally, like open source is like a hobby for me. So I like to read code, I like to contribute to projects whenever I can see, but like even hobbies can end into burnout. So nowadays what I have done is like I don't write anything on Saturdays. Like I don't
Hmm.
write a single line of code on Saturdays, and like that opens up my Saturday to do an amount of things. I spend time with my dog. Sometimes I read books. Yeah, I started reading books a lot recently. So yeah, like you have to create boundaries, I guess. uh, like most of the time burnout happens because you don't have clear boundaries. Burnout happens at work because you are thinking about work at home.
Hmm.
Similarly, like burnout happens at open source because you don't have a clear boundary. Like you do open source whenever you want. So like I kind of plan myself like what I would be working on open source this week, and like unless there's something unexpected that comes up, I generally plan a week ahead. And like I already have in like on every Monday I already have in my mind like what are the issues I'm going to contribute.
Hmm.
And like if something unexpected comes up, I have like an important that comes up, that have to be picked up. But generally plan ahead and like don't try to overwork. uh, Open source or like any kind of work you do in public, uh, it accumulates. So keep doing little bit of it every day or every week or something like that, and over years it will collect and become huge.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great piece of advice actually, like to plan your thing because it happens with me a lot of time. Something sometimes when I'm interested in the project that I'm working on, it goes until like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I still don't feel like sleeping. And then the next day I'm like
Yeah,
totally gone, like I just can't do anything
that's
fruitful. So
yeah, that's so true.
yeah,
But the thing is like I have learned this thing the hard way, that consistency is more important than short bursts
yeah,
of productivity.
yeah.
So if you can spend 1 hour every day on one thing,
Hmm.
that would be much more beneficial than a 24-hour sprint.
Wow, yeah, that's a super advice. Yeah. So yeah, I think we are almost coming to the end of our session. So one last, like real burning debate that's an ongoing debate. What's your take on that? Like Angular, React, and Vue. Where do you see Vue stands with respect to Angular and React? Like, what are the advantages and where are the shortcomings also of Vue as compared to these frameworks?
So the good thing is like we have basically written this thing down on our documents also. Like Vue is in between Angular and React. Like Angular and React are two polar opposites. React is something like too open. It's say like do your thing, whatever you want, pick your thing, go shopping, pick your state management tool, pick your router, do whatever you want to do. Whereas Angular is like there's one way to do this thing, and like this is the way. uh, Vue is like you can Vue is in between these two. Like there's some freedom, but like there there is freedom, but there is also recommendation. Like we recommend tools like use Vuex, but
mm,
there are other state management tools for Vue also. You can use MobX with Vue,
mm,
but things like we go with this recommendation route, and like we have official libraries for important features that that makes the uh, that reduces fragmentation in the ecosystem, and like removes the overhead of choosing your tools. Like you don't have, if you are writing React, you have to discuss with your team and like finalize what state management tool you are going to use. In 90% of the cases for Vue, it's Vuex.
mm,
Same is with the router. So like there is less fragmentation and less cognitive overhead for making choices in this thing. So Vue is in between these two, and like all these three frameworks are really good. They have their different design principles, but in the end they are giving us really good results. So pick something that suits your requirements. Like you need a tool which is complex enough to solve your problem.
yeah,
If tool becomes too complex, then you are spending time in handling the tool rather
yeah,
than solving your problems. And if your tool is very simple, then it, like there are chances like it cannot solve the problem, or like it cannot solve the problem without some assistance from another tool. So
mm,
you have to find the correct amount of complexity of the tool which is like which can solve your problem. So pick whatever you want. And today we don't have these three. We have a dozen of frameworks. Like Svelte is very good, and like Svelte has also some promising use cases out there. And none of these frameworks replace each other. They have their
mm,
niche, and I think in the end, like advice is like pick something what that works for you.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good piece. Like, even I saw the same thing with Angular. Like, it was really good to get started, like very easy. But then if I want to change something, then it's difficult over there. And it's the exact opposite on the React side. And Vue is kind of in between. It allows you to pick and choose, but it also has a good set of recommendations to start with. So, yeah. So thank you so much for, staying back so late, actually. It's quite late for you. And it was a real good discussion, for especially for those who are trying to start with open source contribution. There are a lot of good pointers that you have given, so I hope it will be a lot more useful for them. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.